The day Laura Bennett vanished felt like the universe had simply swallowed her whole. It was late afternoon, the kind of evening where the city was still buzzing with the usual chaos, but something in the air felt off. James Knight, a tech mogul known for his billion-dollar empire, was sitting in his penthouse overlooking the skyline of New York City. The glass windows reflected his sharp suit, the same one he'd worn to countless meetings, events, and galas. He was a man accustomed to control, accustomed to having everything at his fingertips. But that day, he felt a sense of unease deep in his gut, a gnawing emptiness he couldn't shake. The apartment was eerily quiet, the silence only broken by the soft hum of the city below. He could still smell her perfume in the air, faint but unmistakable. She'd left hours ago, just before he'd gotten caught up in another deal that threatened to take him away from her once again. She'd smiled, kissed him on the cheek, and told him she'd be back soon. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But Laura never came back. At first James brushed it off. She probably went out with friends, needed some space, or had a last-minute meeting of her own. Laura had always been the more mysterious one in their relationship. While he thrived on the spotlight, she preferred to keep to herself, even when she was by his side. He never pushed her for answers. He respected her boundaries as much as he could in their fast-paced, whirlwind world. She was an enigma, and that was part of the allure. Hours passed. Then, a day. And another. Still no word. James tried calling her, texting her, even emailing her, but there was nothing. His mind raced. Maybe she had just needed a break from the chaos of their lives, from the constant demands of his empire. Or maybe something had happened. The nagging suspicion began to creep in, but he pushed it aside. He had too much at stake, too much riding on the projects he was involved in. The last thing he needed was to start doubting her, doubting them. But then, the calls started. First, a voicemail from her best friend asking if he knew where Laura was, then another from one of their mutual acquaintances, someone who had been at the charity gala they attended the night before. No one had heard from her. Her phone was turned off, her apartment was empty. No one knew where she was. James's world started to fracture. For the first time in years, he felt completely helpless. And that feeling grew worse when, days later, his team of private investigators came back with nothing. Absolutely nothing. No sign of Laura anywhere. She had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. No clues, no goodbye. No explanation. The media, of course, had a field day. They speculated endlessly, tossing out theories from the plausible to the absurd. Was she kidnapped? Did she run away? Was she trying to escape the intense pressure of her life with James? But James knew something they didn't. He knew there was something more to Laura's disappearance. She had always been guarded, but she wasn't the kind of person to just disappear without a trace. There was a reason she was gone. A reason she had chosen to leave without even saying goodbye. And he would find out what that reason was. Weeks passed. James threw himself into his work, throwing money and resources at the search for Laura. It consumed him. He spoke to friends, lawyers, hired more private investigators. He reached out to her family, the ones she had always kept at a distance. No one knew where she had gone. It was like she had vanished off the face of the earth. The loneliness crept in. The emptiness he had long ignored began to claw at him. He would go to bed each night staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her absence more than he ever anticipated. The person he had once shared everything with, his dreams, his fears, his deepest thoughts, was gone. And with her, a part of him was missing too. It was then that the rumors began. Whispers in the corridors of the high society circles they once moved in. People started talking. Laura hadn't just disappeared. No, there were whispers that she had left because of something much darker, a secret. For 6 years, James kept searching. He pored over every document, every trace of her life before the disappearance. He started to question everything, their relationship, their shared moments, their future. Had she been hiding something from him? Was there more to her than he had ever known? And just when he thought he would never find her, he got the call. The email came one night, tucked away in his inbox, subject line reading, "I know where she is." The email was brief. The sender remained anonymous, but the message was chilling. Laura wasn't just hiding, she was alive. And, even more shockingly, she wasn't alone. There was a child, his child. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. A child. Laura had never mentioned wanting children, and they had never discussed starting a family. In fact, they had never really spoken about anything beyond their immediate world. Business, success, survival. Laura had always been the one thing he thought he could never fully understand. And now, she had disappeared with a secret so big that it made everything else seem small. How could she have kept this from him? How could she have gone through all of that alone? The thought of her with a child, raising it somewhere in hiding, struck a chord deep inside him. But it wasn't just about the child, it was about the truth. And the truth was far more complicated than he ever imagined. Laura hadn't just disappeared. She had left behind a trail of unanswered questions, of unresolved pain. She hadn't vanished into thin air. No, she had disappeared because someone or something had forced her into hiding. Someone dangerous, someone who would stop at nothing to keep her secret buried. And so, the hunt began. James Knight, once a man who ruled his empire with precision, was now on a personal mission, not just to find Laura, but to uncover the dark forces at play, to find the answers to questions that had been haunting him for years, and to face the one truth that would shatter everything he thought he knew about himself, about her, and about the child that had changed their lives forever. The message had been clear, but it gave James no peace. He couldn't sleep that night, or the night after. He kept reading it over and over, as though some hidden meaning would appear if he stared long enough. "I know where she is." The words burned in his mind, pulling him into a spiral of thoughts he couldn't escape. Whoever sent that message knew exactly what they were doing, dropping a bomb and walking away, leaving him to pick up the pieces. He called his security chief, ordered his best people on it. Within hours, the email was traced to an IP address in Florence, Italy. Florence, a city Laura had once mentioned when they were together. She loved art, architecture, and the feeling of being lost among strangers. Back then, she talked about it like a dream destination. Now, it wasn't a dream, it was a trail. James didn't hesitate. Within 24 hours he was on his private jet, heading across the Atlantic. His assistant tried to talk him out of it. His legal team warned about privacy violations, but he didn't care. For 6 years he had lived in the shadow of her absence. Now, for the first time, there was a thread, and he would follow it no matter where it led. When he arrived in Florence, the city was bathed in golden light, but he barely noticed. Every street corner, every passing face, made his pulse quicken. What if she was here? What if, after all this time, he saw her again, walking among the crowd, her hair tied back, her face turned slightly away? He imagined it so vividly that at moments he thought he did see her, only to realize it was just his mind playing tricks on him. But then, something real happened. On his second night in Florence, while scanning through a local cafe's security feed his team had quietly obtained, one of his men froze the video. A woman, sitting at an outdoor table, wearing a loose white dress, sunglasses, and a hat. The footage was blurry, but even through the grain, he recognized the way she held her cup, elegant, careful, the way Laura always did. He leaned closer to the screen, his heart hammering. Zoom in, the frame sharpened, and though the sunglasses hid most of her face, the slight tilt of her chin, the way her fingers brushed against the table, it was her. There was no mistaking it. Laura Bennett, and she wasn't alone. Across from her sat a small boy, around 5, maybe 6 years old, his messy brown hair catching the sunlight as he laughed. That laugh, that expression, hit James harder than anything ever could. He didn't need a DNA test. The boy had his eyes the same sharp blue, the same mischievous flicker. His son. James gripped the edge of the desk, breath heavy. The world suddenly narrowing to that single image. The woman he'd spent 6 years searching for was alive, sitting in a cafe halfway across the world, with a child she had never told him about. His child. He couldn't move, couldn't think. The emotions tangled inside him. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, relief. Part of him wanted to storm out and find her immediately. Another part hesitated. What if she didn't want to be found? What if there was a reason she was hiding? But the decision was already made. He had come too far to stop now. The next morning, James arrived at that very cafe, dressed down in simple clothes, sunglasses hiding his face. He sat in a corner, pretending to read while his eyes scanned every table. Minutes felt like hours, and then she appeared. Laura walked in, holding her son's hand. He froze. The air left his lungs. She looked almost the same, yet not at all. There was a calmness in her now, a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. Her hair was longer, her movements softer, but her eyes, those deep brown eyes, still carried the same fire. The boy tugged her hand, pointing to the pastries, his small voice full of excitement. She smiled at him, that gentle, protective smile only mothers had. James watched them, every heartbeat echoing in his chest. When she finally turned slightly toward his direction, their eyes met. For a moment, everything around them disappeared. The noise of the cafe faded, the people vanished. It was just the two of them, 6 years of silence, secrets, and pain hanging in the air between them. Laura froze. Her hand tightened on her son's. Her expression changed from surprise to shock, then to something unreadable fear. James stood slowly, unable to hold back any longer. He walked toward her, each step deliberate. "Laura," he said quietly, voice trembling. She didn't respond. Her eyes darted toward the exit, as if measuring the distance, calculating an escape. "Don't," he said softly. "Don't run." Her lips parted, but no words came. The boy looked between them, confused. "Mom," he asked, tugging her sleeve. James looked at the child again, his son. Laura finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." 6 years, Laura, he said, emotion breaking through. 6 years I've been looking for you for answers. You left no goodbye, no explanation. And now I find out you have a child, my child, and you tell me I shouldn't be here. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, the mask slipped. "You don't understand, James," she said. "It wasn't about you. It was about keeping him safe." "Safe from what?" She hesitated, glancing around the cafe. "Not here, not now." Before he could say anything else, she turned to her son. "Eli, sweetheart, let's go." "Eli," James repeated, the name catching in his throat. Laura grabbed her son's hand and started walking away. James followed, but she spun around, her tone sharp now. Don't, James, please. If you care about him, if you ever cared about me, you'll let us go. But he didn't. He followed her out onto the cobblestone street, the sounds of the city muffled under the weight of everything unsaid. She stopped finally, near an alleyway, her back still to him. 6 years, he said again, voice rough. 6 years you left me thinking you were dead. Do you have any idea what that did to me? She turned slowly, eyes wet but steady. And if I told you the truth then, James, they would have killed us both. His mind went blank. Who? He asked, barely able to process the words. Laura looked around, lowering her voice. You built your empire on technology that people would kill to control. There were people inside your company, powerful people who were using your projects for something else. I found out, and I wasn't supposed to. You think someone wanted to hurt you because of my company? I don't think, she said firmly. I know. They came after me the night I left. I barely escaped. I had to disappear. And then, I found out I was pregnant. Silence. The city noise felt distant, replaced by the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. So you ran, he whispered. I ran to save him, she said, her voice breaking. And to save you. James couldn't speak. For the first time, he saw the fear in her eyes, not of him, but of something else, something still out there. Laura, he said, stepping closer, if what you're saying is true, then you can't keep running. I can protect you both. I have resources. You don't get it, she snapped. They're still watching, James. They know you're here. You shouldn't have come. At that moment, a black car passed slowly along the street, tinted windows glinting in the sunlight. Laura's grip on her son tightened. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's too late. They've already found us. The sound of that car's engine seemed louder than it should have been. It crawled past them like a shadow, black windows reflecting nothing. Laura's hand tightened around her son's as she whispered sharply, Eli, don't look. James followed her gaze, his instincts kicking in. Years of business rivalry had taught him to read danger even when it hid behind calm faces. Whoever was in that car wasn't just passing by. They were watching, waiting. He turned to Laura. We need to leave now. She hesitated, torn between fear and disbelief. Then, seeing the car slowing again at the corner, she nodded. James grabbed her other hand. This way, he said, guiding them into a narrow alley between two stone buildings. Florence's streets were a maze, twisting, uneven, alive with history. But now they felt like a trap. Every echo of their footsteps sounded too loud. Where are we going? She whispered, half running, half pulling Eli along. My hotel, James said. We'll figure out the rest from there. No. Her voice was firm. They'll expect that. You don't understand, James. They've been tracking me for years. They know how you think. He stopped. Then where? Laura scanned the street, her eyes darting across rooftops and corners like someone who had spent years surviving on instinct. There's a small apartment near the river. No one knows about it. I use it when I need to disappear again. The way she said it made something inside him ache, the quiet exhaustion, the way the word disappear rolled off her tongue like it had become part of her. Fine, he said. Lead the way. They moved quickly, weaving through alleys and back streets until they reached a narrow building tucked behind a bookstore. The entrance was small, almost hidden. Laura punched a code into an old metal keypad, the door buzzing open. Inside, the space was modest, a stark contrast to the luxury James was used to. The furniture was old but tidy. A few children's drawings were taped to the wall, clumsy stick figures with messy handwriting underneath. Eli dropped his small backpack by the couch and turned to his mother. Mom, who is he? Laura froze. James felt his chest tighten. She crouched down beside her son, brushing a hand through his hair. He's someone I used to know. Eli tilted his head curiously, then turned to James. You look like me. The words hit him harder than he expected. He swallowed hard and managed to smile. Yeah, he said softly. I guess I do. Laura stood, her eyes meeting his, a storm of guilt and fear. James took a step closer. He deserves to know the truth, Laura, so do I. Her voice trembled. I never wanted it to be like this. I thought keeping you away would protect you both. Protect us from who? Exactly. Laura exhaled shakily and moved to the small kitchen counter, pulling a worn envelope from a drawer. She handed it to him. You built the Titan network 6 years ago, your secure data system. What you didn't know was that parts of it were being weaponized. They were creating algorithms to track people, not data. Political dissidents, whistleblowers, even journalists. I found out when I saw the encryption keys being rerouted through a shell company. When I tried to expose it, everything went dark. James stared at her. That's impossible. I oversee everything that comes out of Titan. You oversee what they let you see, she said bitterly. There's a man named Marcus Vance. He's been your chief operations director since before I disappeared. He's the one pulling the strings behind the shell companies. He's been selling Titan's technology on the black market, and when he realized I'd discovered it, he sent people after me. James's mind reeled. Marcus Vance, his trusted advisor, the man he had built half his empire with. No, he muttered. Marcus would never. He would. She interrupted sharply. He did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, filled with years of unspoken pain and the horrifying realization that the empire he had built might be the very thing that had torn his life apart. Finally, James broke the silence. "You should have come to me. I couldn't," her voice cracked. "You were too close to it. If I had, they would have killed you. I had to disappear for both of us." Eli, sensing the tension, climbed onto the couch, clutching a small toy car. James watched him, realizing that every second of his son's life had unfolded without him. His first steps, his first words, his laughter. He had missed it all. "How long have you been running?" he asked quietly. "Since the day I left," she said. "Different cities, new names, new passports. I kept moving until I found somewhere small enough to disappear completely. Florence was supposed to be safe, and now her expression darkened. Now it's not." A sudden knock on the door made them both freeze. Laura's eyes widened. "They found us." James's instincts took over. He motioned for Laura to grab Eli and move to the back room. The knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice, calm, low, and far too familiar. "Laura, it's been a long time." "Marcus Vance." James's blood ran cold. Laura clutched Eli tighter, whispering, "Don't make a sound." James stepped toward the door. "Marcus," he said, his voice steady. "What are you doing here?" There was a pause, then a cold chuckle. "You shouldn't have come, James. You're interfering in something you don't understand. Open the door," James demanded. "Oh, I don't need to," Marcus said casually. "We already have you surrounded, you and Laura both. You see, I warned her what would happen if she crossed me again, but she didn't listen. And now you've dragged yourself into her mess." James glanced toward Laura. Fear flickered in her eyes. But behind it there was something else: resolve. "James," she whispered, "there's a back exit through the laundry room. It leads to the alley. Take Eli." "I'm not leaving you," he said. "You have to," she insisted. "He's your son. He needs you." The pounding on the door grew louder. "Open it, James," Marcus called out, his voice colder now. "Don't make me break it down." James turned to Laura. "We'll all go." She shook her head. "If we run together, they'll catch us. I'll stall them. You take him and go. I'll find you, Laura. Go." The door cracked under another hit. James grabbed Eli, who clung to him, scared and confused. He met Laura's eyes one last time, a look that said everything words couldn't. Then, reluctantly, he turned and ran. The narrow corridor behind the kitchen was dark, the walls lined with old shelves. He pushed through a metal door and stepped into the alley. The sound of splintering wood echoed behind him. Marcus and his men were inside. He ran faster, holding Eli close, weaving through the back streets until he reached the crowded main square. Tourists bustled everywhere, cameras flashing, laughter echoing. It was the perfect cover, but his heart pounded relentlessly. He stopped at a corner, catching his breath. Eli looked up at him with wide, tearful eyes. "Where's Mom?" James forced a trembling smile. "She'll find us," he said. "She always does." But deep down, he knew something was terribly wrong. Back at the apartment, Laura stood facing Marcus, her back straight, her hands trembling but her eyes defiant. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. Marcus smiled coldly. "You made it easy. The moment James boarded that jet, we knew exactly where to look. You really thought you could hide forever." She glared at him. "You think killing me will fix what you've done?" "I don't need to fix anything," he said. "I just need to erase the evidence, starting with you." Laura took a step back, her heart racing, but there was no fear left in her voice when she said, "You're too late. He knows now." Marcus's smile faded. "Then I guess I'll have to make sure he never tells anyone." He raised his gun, and before the sound of the first shot echoed through the apartment, Laura whispered one last word: "Run." The gleam of Marcus's gun caught the bridge's pale light. The wind howled through the valley, tossing Laura's hair across her face as she gripped James's hand tighter. For a second, everything slowed. The distant hum of the SUV engine, the crunch of gravel under Marcus's shoes, the faint echo of water below. James's mind raced. He wasn't thinking about the billions he'd made, the empire he'd built, or the technology that had put his name on every magazine cover in the world. He was thinking about the small boy asleep in Ethan's car. He was thinking about the woman standing beside him, the one who had risked everything for that boy's life, and for his drop at Marcus, James said, stepping forward, voice steady even as his pulse roared in his ears. Marcus laughed softly. "Still playing the hero, aren't you? That's what got you into this mess. You build machines to control people, then act surprised when someone smarter uses them better. You murdered people," James shot back. "You turned Titan into a weapon." "I optimized it," Marcus replied, the smile twisting his face. "You were too sentimental to see what it could become. Predictive intelligence that can track any human being on Earth, imagine. Governments paying billions for that kind of control." "You're insane," Laura said. Marcus's eyes flicked to her. "You should have stayed hidden. Laura, you were the only loose thread." He cocked the gun, but before he could pull the trigger, a voice echoed from behind him. "Step away from them." Ethan, he stood by the SUV, a gun trained squarely on Marcus. The headlights behind him painted long, ghostly shadows across the bridge. Marcus didn't flinch. "Ah," The soldier turned bodyguard. You really think you'll shoot me before my men shoot you? Already did, Ethan said calmly. They're not getting up. For the first time, Marcus's smile faltered. James took the chance. He lunged forward, grabbing Marcus's wrist. The gun fired, the shot cracking through the night, but it went wide, striking the railing instead. Sparks flew. Marcus swung, hitting James hard across the jaw, but James didn't stop. He grabbed Marcus's coat, forcing him back toward the edge. You stole everything from me, James roared. You turned my company into a weapon, destroyed her life, and made me a stranger to my own son. Marcus sneered through clenched teeth. You built the weapon, James. I just made sure it did what it was meant to. They struggled against the railing, metal groaning under their weight. Then another shot rang out. Ethan's Marcus froze. The bullet had hit his shoulder. His gun slipped from his hand and clattered onto the bridge, sliding toward the edge. Laura rushed forward, pulling James back. Marcus staggered, blood soaking his sleeve. He laughed weakly. You think killing me changes anything? Titan's system is already active. You can't stop it. James stared at him, breathing hard. Maybe not, but I can destroy what you built on it. Marcus's smirk faded. You wouldn't dare. I already have, James said quietly. While you were chasing us, Ethan's team breached Titan's servers. Everything you hid, every sale, every secret, every client, it's already been uploaded to global networks. The world will know by morning. Marcus's face drained of color. He didn't finish. The railing beneath him gave way, the metal snapping with a deafening crack. His body tilted backward, and for a brief, silent second, his eyes met James's cold, furious, then gone. He fell into the river below, swallowed by the black water. Silenced, Laura stood frozen, trembling, staring at the spot where Marcus had vanished. James took her hand gently, grounding her back in the moment. Ethan lowered his gun, stepping closer. We need to move. Authorities will be here soon. They left the bridge together, headlights slicing through the fog as they drove into the night. Behind them, the faint wail of sirens began to rise. Police, maybe federal agents, maybe something else entirely, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth was out. The system Marcus had created was gone, its data burned and scattered. Hours later, the first light of dawn crept over the mountains. The safe house sat quiet, tucked beneath pine trees dusted with frost. Inside, Eli stirred on the couch as Laura knelt beside him, brushing his hair softly. He blinked awake, eyes bright and sleepy. Mom, she smiled, tears welling up. Hey baby, I'm here. He yawned, then noticed James standing nearby. You found her, he said, voice small but certain. James smiled faintly. She found us. Ethan stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. It's done, he said quietly to someone on the other end. The leaks hit every major outlet. Titan's board just announced Marcus dead and Nitech under investigation. James is out. He ended the call, turned toward them. You're free now, both of you. Laura sat back, exhaling slowly, the weight of 6 years finally breaking off her shoulders, but there was no victory in her eyes, just relief. What happens now? James looked at her for a long moment. Now we start over. No running, no lies. Eli looked between them. Does that mean we can stay together? James knelt beside him. It means we can finally be a family. The boy smiled, the kind of pure and guarded smile only a child could give, and threw his arms around both of them. Laura closed her eyes, holding them tight, feeling the world finally slow down. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting golden light through the trees. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a beginning. Weeks passed. The story dominated headlines around the world. Tech empire exposed in global surveillance scandal. Reporters camped outside every Nitech office. Politicians scrambled for statements, and governments denied involvement. Marcus Vance's body was never recovered, but his crimes were everywhere. Encrypted messages, offshore accounts, and hidden programs brought to light. James Knight stepped down from his company quietly. No public statement, no interviews. The world called him a whistleblower, a traitor, a hero, sometimes all three in the same breath. None of it mattered. What mattered was the small farmhouse in northern Italy where he, Laura, and Eli now lived. Their life moved slowly. Mornings were filled with sunlight spilling through open windows, the sound of Eli's laughter echoing through the kitchen. Laura painted again, something she hadn't done since before she met him. And James for once didn't check his phone every 5 minutes he didn't need to. One evening as they sat on the porch watching the sky fade to orange, Laura reached for his hand. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. He turned to her. Regret what? Everything that happened. Losing the company, the money, the life we had. James thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, that life wasn't real. This is, she smiled faintly, resting her head against his shoulder. You really think we're safe now? He looked out at the horizon, the last light dipping behind the hills. We're never completely safe, Laura, not in this world. But for the first time, I don't feel like we're running anymore. They sat in silence for a while, the night settling around them. Crickets sang in the grass. Somewhere inside, Eli was humming to himself, building something out of scraps of wood, his latest invention. James watched him through the window and smiled. Looks like he's got your brain. Laura said softly. "And your heart," James replied. The wind carried their laughter away into the dark, into a world that finally seemed at peace. But miles away, deep in a server room no one had found yet, a single line of code blinked to life, the remnant of Titan's algorithm, still running, still learning. Its screen flickered once, then printed 2 words across the monitor.